All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Again, as David mentioned, apologies for the technical difficulties this morning, but hope that it was not too difficult to access this new link and appreciate your flexibility. My name is Hollis Klinkenbeard. I work with the Converged User Group. Community hours are held monthly every third Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern so that we can virtually connect with all of our members and discuss a variety of topics based on your interest. If you missed any of the past few community hours, they are posted on our website on the resources page. And in case you're not familiar with the Converged User Group, we are a customer-led community connecting members, exploring Dell converged and hyper-converged solutions to share ideas, best practices, and experiences. Today, please use the chat function for any questions or discussion amongst your peers. Speakers will respond to your questions during or at the end of today's discussion. Your feedback helps us to plan future sessions, so please participate in any surveys that we have at the end of today's program. All participants will be entered in to win a drawing with some great prizes. And with that, I will pass it back to David.
Hollis, thank you very much. And panelists, if I could get a thumbs up just for a sound check, I think we're good, but you got me? Fantastic, thank you. And thank you everybody for tuning in to yet another Converged Community Hour. We really appreciate this, and we are working hard to bring a sense of community to you through these electronic devices. Hopefully soon we will get out there and be traveling. I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. Until then, this is a great way to speak with experts, and we bring our customer experts and our subject matter experts to you, as Hollis said, every month or so. I'd like to thank Dell Technologies and VMware for sponsoring this series and making this possible. Thank you very much. And we've got a fantastic show today for you. We are going to be talking VX Block 1000, vScale, with two of my favorite people, Adam Lyon, Director of IT Operations at Lincoln Investment, and also on the Converged User Group Board of Directors, and Niloy Bhattacharya, Director of Global Technology Office at Dell Technologies. And well, you've got this shirt there, Niloy, so he is the vScale expert and the vBlock expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you. No, very good. Thank you for having us, David, and looking forward to talking to everybody here today. We've got a small group, so please be interactive throughout the session.
Yes, we are recording this, so folks will distribute it for on demand. I do think that we got a little bit of a hiccup with the pivot from the technical difficulties, but hey, these things happen, and I think everybody's had these issues occur over the past 12 months plus. So thanks, guys, and we'll get right into it. Adam, you're at tell us a little bit about your situation at Lincoln Investment, and let's get started there for context, please.
Absolutely, David. So a little bit of background about Lincoln Investment. We are in the financial services space here outside of suburban Philly. About 5 years ago, we made the jump to VX Block 740, getting into the CI world, and it has been a fantastic journey for us for a lot of reasons. We opted with a VMAX all-flash array, the full complement of everything else in vBlock, UCS, Cisco networking, and it has been absolutely stellar. But being about 5 years ago, we hopped in there. We are right on the cusp of a hardware refresh. So Niloy, thank you again for taking some time to talk to us here. But being for current customers like myself who might be in the 300, 500, 700 series, how would we think about the Block 1000 and some reasons to go to it and highlight some of the differences?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Adam. And I think this is, a lot of this conversation, just like the initial VX Block conversation, to be honest, comes back to where you are in your journey, right? From a converged and a hyper-converged standpoint, Dell has a broad portfolio, where, depending on your cloud strategy, depending on your workloads, there are a lot of different offerings that we have out there, right? Specifically, if you're looking at a VX Block 3, 5, or 7 refresh, kind of need to look at where you are in that data center evolution and multi-cloud journey, right? VxBlock 1000 is a very, very compelling offer for a customer who's looking basically to do a one-for-one replacement, right? You've got your block, you love it, workloads are running great on it. I just want a newer version of that technology. Perfect answer, right? Go to VxBlock 1000. The advantage you get with VxBlock 1000 is you get the advantage of our new perpetual architecture, right? So once you go to the 1000, we're not going to be having another VxBlock 2000 conversation. You know what I mean? The way the VxBlock 1000 is architected, you are going to be able to replace those components and add newer technologies and retire older technologies seamlessly within the confines of that VxBlock 1000 envelope. However, for a lot of our customers, they're looking for transformation that goes beyond just the block, right? The block was good. That was a great start. I liked my experience there. But I've got all these other technologies in my data center that I'm trying to reconcile. Or maybe I'm looking to introduce, I like the block and I like what 3-tier does for me, but I want to add some hyper-converged technologies. Or maybe I'm stitching my data center into the public cloud more tightly, right? For those customers, we have an offering out there that is broader than the scope and the domain of the VxBlock 1000, and that offering is vScale, right? vScale enables us to help our customers transform not just a workload domain or a set of workload domains, but their entire data center. vScale is a data center fabric. From an IP standpoint, it follows spine and leaf. From a SAN and a fiber channel standpoint, it follows a core edge topology. And into that fabric, you can now plug in, traditional storage and blade dense compute technologies, but you can also plug in hyperconvert technologies. You can also plug in third-party technologies that are not procured from Dell. And those fabrics can now be integrated into public cloud environments. So, a little bit of a long-winded answer there, Adam, but that's kind of the mindset of where am I in my journey? What am I looking to really address in this next phase? And that'll kind of help you understand, do I go, just a block refresh or do I go broader?
Well, that's a great answer, Nilo, and thank you, because a lot of the things that you just touched on are very relevant to where Lincoln is on our journey. And hopefully, some of these questions I'd like to ask you here, well, it might be a little bit, ground level here. Hopefully you can kind of help out some of the other folks on the call here for the fact that, like you said, we are ready to refresh the 740. We just, for a little bit of context here, we've got 2 redundant data centers with similar hardware in both spots. We also still rely heavily on an IBM mainframe, an I-series. And luckily, one of the big benefits for the block for us is that we were able to consolidate our storage for the I-series on the VMAX that's inside the block, and that has worked fantastic for us. Our data protection through data domain and Avamar is all plugged in there, and we've really done a lot to consolidate. But when you talk about where we are on our journey with the refresh coming up, still having to support an I-series, we have 2 data centers that soon might grow to a 3rd, where we have some other hardware that exists out there. And we're now talking about scale, ease of management, and how do we integrate all this? We might even be dipping our toes into HCI here at some point soon too. So, and even when you talk about going out to public cloud, these are all things that we are right on the doorstep of. And obviously either Block 1000 and or vScale could play a huge role in this as we go and define. So how would the architecture of vScale help Lincoln out? Knowing that we've got I-series, other various hardware, what kind of hardware are we putting in and how does all this integrate together?
Yeah, so the big difference between, block and vScale really comes down to the network topology, right? So in a block environment, what you would do to tie in those technologies. We've got a couple of ways that we help our customers tie in those technologies. Fundamentally, that the outline of the block or the design of the reference architecture of the block is bordered by a pair of IP leaf switches or IP switches and a pair of SAN switches, right? Now you can do things from that perspective. We can take we can take your I-Series and we can dedicate some FA ports on the VMAX or PowerMax for that I-Series. We can do things like hang additional switches from that top pair of switches for your isilon and for your data domain. But fundamentally, you're bounded by that pair of IP leaves and that pair of storage leaves. In a vScale architecture, we take a more fabric-based approach, right? So instead of having a single pair of leaves for the entire environment, we actually introduce spine and leaf on the IP side. So you would have a pair of leaves for your UCS and for your compute domain, but you then would have a separate pair of leaves for perhaps just isilon, depending on how big your isilon estate is, perhaps just data domain, or maybe you put your isilon and your data domain under the same pair. If you were to go down the road with hyperconverged, we would give you a pair of leaves for the hyperconverged layer. And then same thing on the SAN side, right? So you would place your array under a SAN core. You would have a pair of SAN edge switches for your compute environment, and then have a pair of SAN edge switches for your open and anything else that plugs in. So through this, and then across both of these, we provide a management layer, right? So the advantage of the vScale approach is this modularity helps you out in a couple of different ways. It helps you out from a lifecycle management standpoint, right? Because you can start to lifecycle these cells, what we refer to as cells, but these areas of technology, you can lifecycle them independent from each other. So that's a win for some of our customers. Depending on, if you got to have an update done to your storage side, and maybe you're waiting for, the I-Series to get a firmware update that'll support it, you can go ahead and lifecycle that separately from your computer, from your IP fabric. So that has that advantage from an LCM, code update standpoint. It also has some advantages from a retiring of assets and actual life cycling of the hardware itself, because you have the ability to say, let's say down the road, you wanted to introduce a new, more additional compute or a new type of technology into the environment. What you can do is you can go ahead and create a new cell for that new type of technology, and then transition your workload over to that technology, and then retire the old cell. Now, VxBlock does have some of these similar types of characteristics, right? As I mentioned at the beginning, you do have the ability to swap components out, if you would, over time on the 1000. So it really comes down to an architectural principle discussion, right? You're going into the next generation of your data center. What is the architectural principle you want to align to, right? If you want to align to this sort of cell-based modular approach, that's where vScale comes in. If you want something that is more integrated or consolidated, that's where the VxBlock 1000 comes in, right? So that, it can sometimes, sometimes these architectural things are a little bit nuanced, right? It's like, well, you could do this or you could do that, but that's the big difference between the two approaches.
All right, fantastic.
Yep.
So thank you. Sorry,
Adam,
David,
can I jump in for a sec? Neil, a question. If, Adam, I heard him talking about he's got 2 data centers, possibly a third. Is this a time where, if people are looking at, I will assume, an acquisition or growing, let me just call it growing. If people are looking to grow, is that the right time to start thinking about the data center architecture philosophy, or when is there a right time, or do these things just kind of happen and then all of a sudden people get to the point of like, wow, we should have thought things through? Like, What about that?
The right time is always a hard question, right? Everybody always makes the right decision in that point of time. When is the right time to look at it overall, right? Look, acquisition certainly is a great time to be kind of thinking about, okay, kind of going back to the modularity of vScale, right? I'm going to be bringing in additional technology, vendors, people, all of these aspects. What is the best way to compartmentalize and not have, to ease the integration of those technologies into my environment, right? So vScale certainly helps you with that. I think for a lot of our customers, they're kind of, very similar to Adam, they're kind of at that juncture of, okay, I've got a hardware refresh coming up on the horizon, right? I know my technology is older, I need to refresh it, support is coming due, whatever. I also know, I'm looking at public cloud, right? There's not a company out there that, at some level of leadership, they're not having a public cloud conversation. I'm also looking at just sort of even if I'm having a local, even if I decide that on-premise is the right answer for me, how do I make my on-premise investments more efficient, financially efficient, right? So when you're having those conversations, is the time to be having sort of an architectural or a vScale conversation. And like I mentioned at the beginning, right, Dell Technologies as a company, Michael's done an amazing job of pulling together a variety of technologies, right? We've got offerings like Azure Stack, where we've partnered very closely with Microsoft for customers where, they're looking at Microsoft sort of as their cloud control plane, right? We have our partnership with VMware on VxRail. We've got, our own software-defined storage in the PowerFlex portfolio. We've got all of these technologies, and what vScale does is really provide a way to unify your consumption of those technologies, right? So yeah, to answer your question, David, acquisition is certainly a good time when you're looking at, new technologies or sort of, making that pivot of what do I invest on premise versus where do I invest in public cloud. Those are the right times to be having this conversation.
Fantastic.
Adam, how do you guys think about your data center?
Well, ever growing, constantly changing. Like you said, there's a lot of either through just natural growth or acquisition. Us going to a data center was, a pretty big step for us. Like I said, when we made that transformation to block, we were not only coming from, traditional separate components and, a bunch of R710 power edges sitting there running ESX. We were still in an on-prem computer room that, no joke, was right next to a huge rock cliff that hunks of it would fall off at time, and we didn't really have the best power in that spot. So for us, getting out of that world into redundant data centers was huge, and it's afforded us a lot more flexibility in terms of uptime, redundancy, and resiliency. For all the obvious reasons that you can imagine. But now we're faced with this next challenge, like you said. Lincoln has been growing a lot lately. And while the block has done a great job for us for the last 5 years, like I said, we're now at a spot where new block refresh. So we're having that conversation about the 1000. We're having a conversation about HCI and where that can fit. We're talking about supporting legacy applications. We're also talking about a third data center that is going to come online with similar hardware, but it is not a true block. So we're now looking at this overall, what's going to get us the quickest way to integrate everything, but also to manage it, to keep it managed, and like I said, keep that life cycle process moving along. So I guess my next question, then, that being said, Niloy, is there, aside from the, like you said, being bound by IP switches and SAN switches, is there a right size for vScale? Is size a factor, more or less?
Not really, right? We have some customers who we're very large data centers. They're very large companies that have leveraged vScale to sort of help build out these environments. We also have some very small customers, right, that are leveraging vScale because of its modularity and its flexibility. But they only have, 4 pair of leaf switches, right? Or 6 pair of leaf switches. So it's fairly small. We're also having some interesting conversations around robo and enterprise edge type of conversations, right? I want to actually bring in one of the questions that I saw come up in chat real quick and address this. So Jonathan, we absolutely do have a 2-node VxRail solution that is intended for robo use cases. It has cloud witness capability. We've got things that we've done to really kind of simplify that and give you that capability. We've also just very recently launched our PowerStore X offering, right? So one of the things, one of the pieces of feedback that we got from the VxRail side of the house is customers said the VxRail offering was good in a 2-node configuration, but if their storage needs exceeded their compute needs, then they would, the VxRail, they would be forced to buy more VxRail nodes just to have the storage capacity, and that wasn't something they wanted. So with our PowerStore X offering, we have a very similar approach of a 2-hypervisor implementation, but with scalable storage if your robo use case has a need for storage scaling. So we've got a couple of options, and yes, certainly, right, Jonathan, the witness is, it's a hot topic, right? We've can we put the witness in the switch? Can we put the witness somewhere else, right? Like we've had a lot of those types of conversations. Tying it back to vScale for a second, conversations that we are having with our customers around the network fabric, because look, these data centers or these edge use cases, they need networking, right? And if you're a customer who has a lot of networking sites, managing that networking in each individual location can get very complicated. So we've had conversations with customers, a fair number of conversations with customers in recent times, where we're actually able to take the data center fabric and extend it using remote leaves out to those edge locations. So it follows sort of a hub and spoke model where they have, certain data centers that are the hubs, and then you have clusters of these edge sites that are remote leaves. You don't need to have the complexity of a spine and leaf architecture at the remote site. It's just a pair of switches, but you're pushing policy to those remote sites from a central location. You're not managing each site as a unique location, right? And then, as Jonathan just said in chat, right? You can leverage, ACI, NSXT, the SD-WAN technologies, whether you're going the Cisco Viptela route or the VMware VeloCloud route, those can be integrated in. And you can really, it's funny, when I talk to customers and really kind of talk about the edge management challenge from, 5 years ago or 7 years ago, we've really done a lot as a collection of companies, Dell, Cisco, and VMware, to really ease that problem at the edge. So anyways, I diverged a little bit responding to questions in chat, but yes, there is no minimum size or maximum size to vScale. You can start small and basically grow that environment as your business needs evolve.
Fantastic. That's great, Neely. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's it's a strange new world. A lot of people are navigating. But just from what you're saying, again, I try to take a lot of concepts and put them in context of my infrastructure. I'm sure everybody else on this call does as well. And you're trying to think, well, how does this fit in? What can we gain from it? But like you said, like Jonathan just said, mainframe to decentralized, centralized, and now back to edge computing. But I think what we're coming back here is the availability, the functionality, and the management, and that ability to scale regardless of what you have, because everybody, I'm sure we all have a lot of common factors in our respective environments, but I'm sure everybody's got those individual, unique legacy pockets. How we put them together and grow and retire them, like you said, that's.
And that is the reality, right? The reality is nobody is going to fund an IT project that simply takes a legacy application and replicates like-for-like functionality in modern architecture, right? That's not a project that gets funded. If it's running well on a legacy piece of architecture, let's focus our dollars on innovation and new value, right? Versus doing like-for-like replacements. And that's the reality, right? It doesn't matter how big a company you are, how transformational company you are, right? I can talk about some of the most leading edge technology brands out there, and they have mainframes holding their critical passenger data. They have mainframes holding their critical customer records. They have mainframes holding their critical e-commerce records, right? That is the reality out there. So as a technology company, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to build solutions that don't paint our customers into a corner, that give them the flexibility of bringing forward those legacy technologies and doing like-for-like refreshes where appropriate, but also enabling modern, cloud-native, containerized architectures where appropriate for innovation.
It's all about the choice. And like you said, it's allowing everybody to have that conversation. I think sometimes people maybe felt, like I said, it's that thing in the back that nobody wants to talk about, but it's critical and it's got to be supported and scalable out. So I guess just in a general sense, Niloy, you said you've got some installs of this that are small level, some are a little bit bigger. What have the customers been saying back, about vScale, specifically the management aspect of it? How is that improved? And if you can kind of touch on a little bit more what it has done more for the RCM process, for any of the block customers here who've done the RCM. I know you touched on it a little bit, but what are the customers saying?
I think overwhelmingly the feedback has been positive. I think the approach here causes our customers to do a lot of introspection, right? Just like the block did, right? The block forced people to say, oh, I used to have my compute team and my storage team. Everybody kind of ran their own direction. Now I've got to kind of rethink about how I do this, right? vScale brings in network people, right? The core data center networking people who haven't really thought about converged necessarily, right? They looked at, oh, that's just a pair of leaves. VCE manages it. That's something different, right? It's pulled firewall and load balancer and all sorts of IDS, IPS, L4 to 7 services people into the conversation, right? I have a lot of conversations with people about, okay, well, we're getting this new fabric, right? To the point you were mentioning, now I can move my workloads around. I can run workloads in all these data centers at the same time. What does that mean for my network services layer, right? And once again, right, a lot of the pragmatic conversations is what value does the new way bring to me versus the old way that I do it, right? Just because there's a newer way to do it doesn't necessarily mean it's better, right? Have that conversation a lot with people. When it comes to the LCM side of things, I think, in general, the customer feedback has been very positive. We've got a continued opportunity to make improvements, right? One of the big pieces of feedback that we've heard from our customers across Block and vScale is that they would like to see us do more automation on that front and provide more ability to have, LCM, and this is the tricky thing. People want the step automated. They don't want to have to execute any step manually. But at the same time, they don't want to lose the choice of when you upgrade what, right? Because everybody has to abide by change windows. Sometimes steps in that process take longer than expected. So people have flexibility to be able to pause halfway through, pick back up on a new change window, et cetera. So that has been a big area of focus for us. And we've got a strong roadmap going through the end of this year and into early next year to improve sort of the visibility and the automation that comes in the LCM process.
Neela, to interrupt, it's also, a lot of this stuff is really complicated. So trying to automate really complicated is certainly where there's opportunity. But I would also say there's a lot of opportunity for lessons learned.
There is, right? And I think, the problem with complicated is, having a complicated process means that whether you do it in an automated fashion or whether you do it manually, there's an opportunity for mistakes and challenges, right? So the big ask from our customers is, the RCM that comes with vBlock, right? That tested set of code levels that we've pre-validated and said, we know this set of code levels works together well. Customers love that, right? That's a great value and a great data point. However, the ask is, I need more than that, right? I need more than just those code levels, which is a great start. I want the ability, I need help executing the actual upgrade from one level to the other. And the other aspect of it is we know, given the amount of innovation at Dell and VMware and at Cisco, the best practices around how you implement these components also evolve, right? So the other part of this is customers have said, help me in each one of these upgrades take advantage of the latest best practices, right? I don't want to roll out vSphere 7 on a VxBlock 740 that I bought when vSphere 6.5 was the latest and greatest. And you guys built that the way vSphere 6.5 was supposed to be built out. I don't want that in my vSphere 7 environment. I want it configured the way vSphere 7 is supposed to be built out, right? So those are all things that we've heard, feedback from, and we're looking to tackle, leverage the best practices, make sure they're incorporated into the automation, make sure that the automation can accommodate these transformation from, one set of logical best practices to another. So yeah, it is a very complicated problem space, but at the end of the day, that's why you guys come to us, right, to tackle those problems. Between VxBlock and vScale, there are some pretty significant differences in our sort of thinking around LCM, right? So you think about where RCM is and was. With VxBlock 1000, we're trying to shift the RCM approach to something that is more component-centric, right? If I am running, two different versions of UCS, or two different, let's say I'm running PowerStore and PowerMax, instead of saying, I need to update all of my UCS, my PowerStore, and my PowerMax all at the same time, we're taking an approach whereby we can share back with the customer, hey, you can, here is the target set of code for everything. But for your PowerStore, you can actually upgrade that to this version without having any impact on those other three components, right? You don't have to update the PowerStore and the PowerMax at the same time. So we're trying to make VxBlock lifecycle more modular within the bubble of the VxBlock, within the scope of the VxBlock. vScale is different in that now we're talking about an entire data center. And it's not reasonable that you're going to update everything in the data center all at the same time, right? That was never a thing for vScale. So with vScale, we look to assign LCM and RCM properties to the individual cells and to the fabric. So we have a conversation, we identify, hey, here is a target code that you should be moving everything to, and then you can stage out the updates of your cells accordingly, right? Like I gave you in the previous example, maybe you go update your UCS-based compute cell before you update your ASR, open cell because you're waiting on a firmware upgrade on your ASR. Maybe you hold off on upgrading your SAN fabric because there's a dependency between that open cell and that SAN fabric upgrade, but you can go ahead and upgrade your IP fabric up front because there are no dependencies in that area, right? So we have that type of modularity already built into vScale. Today, the conversation around vScale is more of a services-led conversation, and we are working very diligently to get that, transformed from a services-led conversation into Cloud IQ, so that that planning work can actually be done in Cloud IQ instead of having to be done with a services person, right? I am certain customers will still value the services teams and sort of the insights, right? A lot of the questions are, what do you think? What is your experience? You can't ask those questions to a screen, right? To a website. But Cloud IQ will help you with a lot of those more minute issues, right? Hey, I just got an alert from my VMware vendor, my VMware account team about a new security alert or a new update that's available. Where is that in your testing? Can I do that? Should I not do that? Those sort of day-to-day questions today are human-based, right? You have to call us up or you have to reach out to your account team. In the go-forward strategy, all of that information will be in Cloud IQ. So that means easier planning, less impact assessments, more self-service, just in terms of being able to answer those day-to-day questions.
That is fantastic, Niloy. And it's just everything you're saying. Obviously, there is, the feedback from customers is being heard, and just another great benefit of this group is just knowing that we were being heard and that the improvements, like you said, just with, I'm sure, I don't know how many other people on here have gone through an RCM process, but, now having that ability to have the reliability of the proven code interoperability, but doing it on your own schedule. Here's our target state, but we've kind of removed some roadblocks out of the environment. And that's what that's all about. So thank you very much for, the explanation, but also, for listening. That's a huge win for everybody.
Absolutely, right. I personally, I've been in this journey for, over 10 years now, right? And it's been quite a journey, right? If I think back to the original concept of VxBlock, right, and what we thought our customers would want versus where we've evolved to in the 1000 and in vScale, it's amazing, right? And we thank you for your continued feedback. We thank you for continuing to challenge us and hold us to higher and higher standards. And we hope everybody continues doing that.
All right.
Niloy, thanks. Before we wrap, I just want to make sure that folks in the chat get a chance to ask some more questions. Appreciate what we've been able to bring in. One thing that always seems to come up, and I know JT is a big advocate of this, when you adopt these technologies, CI, HCI, when you're thinking forward, this frees up people, but only to a certain point. When you're thinking about, okay, this is a new way of operating, how can I really take advantage of all these new things that are available rather than doing it the old way? This oftentimes gets down to change management, or change leadership, I guess is a better way to put it, in personnel, retraining people, or thinking about how, now that we're doing it this way, what are the opportunities to free up folks and what can they do next? I'd like to pose to both of you guys, and Niloy, since you're out there talking to a bunch of customers who are adopting vScale and also the VxBlock 1000 folks, but I think, are you seeing folks who adopt vScale have that follow through? Like, they also realize this is a lesson learned. We need to maybe think about the way we're reorganizing or changing it to better bring folks together. What I heard in the conversation is you're actually forcing teams that should probably be talking anyway. You're that change function when you have that vScale conversation of bringing networking in to talk really closely with compute and storage folks as well, and virtualization folks as well. So any lessons learned that you can share or best practices that you're observing? And then Adam, I'd love your perspective as to how you think about it as an IT leader in this change space.
Yeah. Not just compute, network, storage, virtualization, right? But like, as I said, network services, cloud, right? Public cloud, networking, public cloud, workload people. A lot of organizations are really trying to figure out how they, adapt more of a site resiliency engineer type mindset, right? How do I structure my organization so that my workloads are less reliant on an individual piece of technology, right? Be it an array or a blade or whatever, right? And more of a highly available approach where, look, if something fails, I've got another home I can land it in right away, seamlessly, et cetera. So yes, absolutely, customers are going through transformation. There are numerous approaches to how customers try to do that. Some try to do that in place. Some try to organize, make changes up top and then let them flow down. Some people carve out, new teams and get them to focus specifically on cloud and transformation. So yeah, there are numerous approaches. Let's face it, there are customers I'm talking to now that are on their third or fourth iteration, right? We tried it, didn't quite work, then we tried it again, we tried to make these additional shifts. I think for me, that the highlight is the number of people who are just like, no, we are not going to change. We're going to do it the same way we've always done it, is down to, a handful, right? Every customer I talk to realizes it has to be different. Every customer I talk to is being cautious to say, look, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are good things about what I do today that I want to preserve, but there are things that I need to change. How do I do that in the right way? So yes, a lot of conversations. And then before I hand off to you, David, just want to make sure you caught in chat. I think we've got some folks asking for the shirt. Absolutely, we can get these out to you guys. So I'll let David and the team on the phone handle that. But go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, as far as the management, the resources, and freeing up, again, within context of how Lincoln does this, it is myself and two other people that are responsible for our entire infrastructure, and that is storage, compute, virtualization, messaging, Active Directory, network services. It's us. So, and I'm really, really proud of my team. Like I said, I feel like we do a lot with a small crew. So the gains in efficiencies and resources and uptime and just understanding the environment's been huge. Like I said, obviously we've got a bit of a legacy environment, but we're also on this modernization path. This has forced us in a good way to work more, say, with our DevOps team, who are doing agile development right now and have been pushing the cloud adoption. To your point about, well, we've always done it this way, it's never a reason to not look at something new. But like you said before, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. So you're constantly in this state of evaluation, both in technology, strategically, what it means for the business, the capabilities of your team. But at the end of the day, you have to have something that's going to tick off all of those magic boxes. And, the ability for everybody to kind of manage it, keep the lights on, do our day jobs, innovate, and bring in the new tech. Obviously a really important thing for moving forward here. And I'm sorry, looking here, Jonathan.
Kubernetes. The question on Kubernetes.
That is something, Jonathan, that we have not really dove into yet. The little bit of cloud work that we have, or applications sitting in the cloud, we're talking very, very basic, a little bit of blob storage here. It's very much in infancy, but I think there are going to be there will be some opportunity for either Kubernetes, Tanzu, some kind of containerization moving forward with us. And yeah, a lot of our apps right now, we actually have two different stacks. We've got a group who does more or less RPG programming for the mainframe, but we also have a .NET team in here who is doing our modern applications. That .NET team, the DevOps team, are the ones that are also pushing more into the cloud, which is now causing us to react and going, all right, well, we still have this legacy environment here, but we have to make sure that we're staying on top, both from, technical awareness, but, skills wise as well. We can't continue to compete and stay relevant just by staying completely on-prem. So we have to have the knowledge to move forward and the ability to move forward as well. Oh God, COBOL and RPG and Fortran. We had a guy years ago who actually brought in punch cards from his project. That was, so we've even though I haven't seen him, we've had a good run of technical knowledge coming through at Lincoln.
Wait, so you've got a Lincoln application that you're still using that was punch card related?
Jonathan coming in with the big punch card there. No, actually, David, it was nothing in production right now, but
okay.
He was one of our developers.
Historians.
A historian, exactly.
There you go. All right. Yeah. Did you have to bring anybody out of retirement for COBOL and Fortran? I've heard those stories anecdotally, companies that have mission critical apps written in this stuff that they couldn't get anybody to tweak it and they had to bring people out of retirement. But that's probably for another time.
I've heard some COBOL folks are making six figures in some of them, I've heard a couple of them are making almost seven figure salaries as COBOL programmers. It's like, okay, well, maybe I should go back and dust off those skills.
Interesting. Yeah, it's crazy times. Talking about taking it back to, the whole mainframe, then to edge to centralized, and the pendulum swings. Let me just put it that way. I got a little tongue-tied.
No, yeah.
Hey, folks, thank you very much. Adam, any final words here? I know we got a little bit off track towards the end, but I think you were wrapping it up pretty well.
Yep. Yeah, I was just wrapping it up, waxing eloquent, but really just to wrap up my piece here, I'd just like to thank everybody for hopping on here, listening to us talk, and I'd really like to thank Neeloy for your time hopping in here and educating everybody here. So thank you all very, very much.
Yeah. So Adam, thank you so much for being the special guest host, and Neeloy for being the special guest. Folks, thank you for joining. Again, you always run into technical difficulties, so thanks for bearing with us and thanks for joining and participating. Adam, of course, we're going to have you back. Want to keep on top of this story, and in future community hours every Thursday. If Adam's not on the schedule, he usually makes time to participate in chat. So if anybody out there has questions for Adam next time or down the road, you can see him at another community hour or most any Converged User Group events. Check out convergeusergroup.com/events to find out what we're doing. We've got an incredible June 10th Virtual Connect conference that we have 3 sessions at. They're going to be fantastic sessions. We're going to have a booth, an opportunity to come by and chat with everybody. So please mark your calendars for that. Some of the conversation that we had today touched on some great session information we're going to have available on June 10th. I'm excited for that. So I don't want to steal too much thunder yet, but we'll get out there and we'll have some stuff in your inbox with more and more information. Again, thanks to Dell Technologies for making this possible and VMware for co-sponsoring as well. Neeloy, those shirts are awesome. We'll have to put together a Converged User Group shirt page where we can order those, get those in. But anybody on the line, send an email to memberservices@convergeusergroup.com, and we will work with Neeloy to coordinate that and get that out there. Again, thank you very much, panelists, participants. Be sure to join other Converged User Group activities throughout the year. And soon, I hope, well, I guess it won't be too soon, but I'll call it soon. Before the year ends, maybe we'll be in person. If not, here's to 2022. And have a great day, folks. Hollis, are you there to take us home?
Yes, thanks, David. As David mentioned, we have several upcoming events. I put those links in the chat as well as a link to our post-event survey. We definitely appreciate that feedback. So if you were able to complete that, we'd be very grateful. We'll also include that in a follow-up email to all of those attendees. But thank you so much for joining and working with us as we experience some technical difficulties this morning. But we hope to see you at another Converged event soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Be well.
Take care.
Take care.